I'm Jen West, professional rebel of delight.
And I'm Dave Wiesdock, sage of creative scaffolding.
And this is shadow casting. Dave, it's quote day. Do you have one for us, or do I need to go Google one?
Well, hopefully we have one before we started podcasting, right?
Oh, are we supposed to do that?
I don't know. What's today? No. Yeah, I actually have this awesome quote for our podcast today for quote day.
Quote day!
So it's a quote from Dr. Herbert Shofield. The quote is, "Egotism is the anesthetic which nature gives us to deaden the pain of being a fool."
You mean we don't want to be a fool?
I mean,
I didn't realize it was painful to be a fool.
I love being a fool, right?
Right.
You get to learn all the fun stuff when you're the fool, because then you just ask whatever you want.
Yeah.
Right.
Lean into the fool, people. Lean in.
Lean in. That's right. You know, this is really interesting. See, you went exactly where I was going to play with this. So that's awesome. This is why we podcast together, Jen. I wanted to approach quote day a little differently today. Every time we do quotes, we always dissect it from kind of the shared shadow casting perspective. And I thought it'd be fun to dig into some of the words this time, bring a little bit more of my curiosity to the stage rather than the analytical side. So we're going to see how this goes. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't.
The audience will decide.
The audience will decide. That will be your way of commenting. You can rate how this went versus the other podcasts. It can be the arena. So,
do we live?
Yeah, do we live or do we die? So for this podcast and this quote in particular, I loved this quote because there's so many little nuggets in here of things that we have piecemeal gone over in previous podcasts. And I feel this brings a new way of shadow casting and celebrating our humanity, which you already hinted at the celebrating humanity part with the fool, but we'll give our audience some time to sit with that while we go through the rest of this. The first thing that I want to kind of talk about is egotism is the anesthetic. When I think about that, my curiosity goes to the egotism part and the anesthetic. Especially being a chiropractor and having some of that medical background. I mean, we didn't learn how to be anesthesiologists, but anesthetic is a really interesting word for me. As a chiropractor, I wouldn't recommend necessarily taking Advil for a headache, or if you have some low back pain, pop a couple Tylenol. Chiropractors are very much about the body's natural ability to heal, the body's natural ability to regulate its pain, because pain is always a signal. Pain comes from the brain. If you have a low back issue, let's say, and it's causing some pain, a lot of times that comes from low movement, from rigid positions, from poor posture, from poor sleep hygiene, from how you sit, from sitting too much. There's a lot of things that contribute to that. And when we receive that pain is a signal from our body saying we are doing something where we're not being mindful and we're not in tune with how our body needs or what our body needs. So when I look at this quote of egotism as an anesthetic, I think of egotism as the Tylenol, as the Advil. You are receiving a pain signal, and rather than leaning into the pain and getting curious about it and trying to make modifications, we go to egotism. We go, oh my gosh, I just looked like an idiot. I just made a mistake. I'm bright red blushing. Or I asked my boss a question at work and it was like a day one question. And I've been here for 10 years and I can't believe I didn't know it. And I looked like I had, 7 eyes and 3 ears or something. Like, you just got these really weird looks. And so your ego comes in and it's like, Dave, you're okay. You're great at your job. You know what you're doing. You don't need to worry about that. You weren't the fool. Everyone else was the fool around you, kind of thing, right? Because the egotism, it's a double-edged sword. It should be there to kind of help you find your sense of self-confidence. It can be a guide. But really what it does is it says, ignore the pain you're feeling. Don't lean into that. Stay with you're right where you're at. And that's kind of what Advil does. It goes, Oh, you have low back pain? Don't worry about it. Just take some Advil. The pain goes away and then you're fine, right? Because the pain's gone. You don't need to address it. And then 3 days later, the pain comes back. Take some more Advil. That worked last time. And so what happens is you develop these quick solutions and the pain lingers. But here's the nutty part. As the pain continues to linger, it actually gets worse. And so what happens is it's called a pain scale. If you have low back pain, for example, and it's a 2 out of 10, for example, and you take some Advil on Monday, Wednesday it comes back, maybe it's a 3, you take some Advil. 3 weeks later, all of a sudden you're like, man, a month ago, this low back pain was just a little tweak. And now it's like a 5 out of 10. Like I can't even get out of my chair without my low back stiffening up. You've ignored the pain. You've used your ego. You used the Advil to cover up that pain. And so what happens with our ego and being the fool is we ignore it once. Okay, it wasn't that bad. Then we ignore it again. Ooh, now I'm really starting to feel it because I haven't addressed it. And now it's happened twice. And we as humans love patterns. And so the more we recognize the pattern, the more we see it, the more it hurts because the more we need to go inwards and figure out where that common denominator is. And that the ego doesn't like that. And so for me, tying this all together, that's how I view this quote is that when we are the fool as a kid, those first few times, you don't really care because everyone's a fool as a kid. We're all learning, we're all growing, but then you grow up, you become an adult. And suddenly this mindset of play and sincerity and being, and just being okay with being the fool because none of your friends know the answers when you're 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. You're all just kind of learning and growing and figuring it out together. There's a space and even an acceptance of being the fool. In fact, I downright say that some people choose to lean into that. Think the class clown archetype, the people that just go full on into being the fool. And that's another form of egotism.
Totally. There's so many forms. I mean, I think about the example you gave, and I just think defensiveness. Protect yourself from being the fool. It wasn't me, it was them. The question they asked, why are they asking these? Yeah, just that wall goes up to, I need to find comfort again. I love the example of using Advil too, and the pain getting bigger and bigger, where pretty soon the ego Advil doesn't help anymore. It hurts no matter how much you take.
Yep. And then on the flip side, you start taking more Advil because one used to solve it, but now the pain's so high that you got to take 2. And here's the interesting thing on why I brought it up. It's not actually, as they're doing studies and finding this, it's not actually that the pain's gotten worse. I mean, it can, but really what's happening is you are deafening your pain signals. So now your body has to increase how much pain it's giving you to address the issue because even though you're taking the Advil, you're still not addressing the issue of the low back pain. To address the issue of the low back pain, you need to move more. You need to get up more frequently. You need to do some yoga, some stretching, go get adjusted by a chiropractor. Or if it's really bad and you have something like a herniated disc, either A, still go see the chiropractor, hint, hint, or if you need to and you need surgery or something, then go take the steps you need to take. And that's where I feel the egotism is the countermeasure and why it's such a good example as Advil, because egotism doesn't make you take personal responsibility for your actions. It allows you to push it aside. And this whole podcast is about shadow casting. It's this ability to project, it's how you project yourself into the world. If you're always projecting this sense of non-responsibility, the universe is going to keep activating that pain signal of the fool until you're willing to look at it and address it. And this is why this is a little bit of a different podcast, because I really want to push this idea of curiosity. When the pain comes up, yes, it hurts. And before you go to the Advil, before you go to the ego, get curious. Why am I? Your body doesn't produce pain in a vacuum. It just doesn't wake up one day and say, Dave, I'm going to give you some low back pain today. Here you go. You know, there's stuff leading up to it. And you don't feel that red hot pain of embarrassment of being a fool just willy-nilly either. There are things contributing to that. And the more you're willing to lean into that and be curious, the more you look at how your shadow, how you present yourself to the world. And here's the really cool part. the more you learn to listen to your full and not go to ego, but go to something like curiosity, the more you begin to empathize with those around you and celebrate all of our humanity, because we all have moments where we feel like a fool. And the more we can learn to approach and love ours, the more we can learn to accept, well, the more we can learn to have space for everyone else's.
Yeah. And as you allow your pain to come in, you can understand why other people aren't. So there's less judgment in the fact that they're using Advil. Like, I've been there, I know, I get it. And if you can go this other direction, you don't need the Advil. And here's the distinction I want to make, since we're just playing with the words: egotism versus our ego. Because the ego's not bad. It wants to keep us safe. It wants to keep us comfortable. It will use fear so that we don't change. It doesn't need to be the driver. And that's, I think, what egotism is. It's the ego has completely taken over the world and it's running the show. It's like fear in Inside Out. If that little character of fear was running the show, it would be really bad.
Yeah.
And so we don't want ego to take over and become egotism. We want it to be a useful consultant, as it were. Here's how you've always been. Here's what's going to happen if you keep doing that. I mean, the ego knows what it knows. So whatever pattern you developed, ego is happy with that pattern because it knows what's going to happen. Even if it's not great, even if it sucks, it knows that pattern and knows if I do these things, this will be the outcome of it. And then you can decide, yeah, I don't like the outcome of that. Ego, we're going to grow and you're going to be really uncomfortable and hate it and tell me all the fear things of why I shouldn't do it. But we need to change this. I'll give you a new pattern. Just give me time. And that's good, healthy fool. I'm jumping into the abyss because I don't know what it is. And ego's saying, but we know this. And you're like, no. I'm going to be the fool. We'll figure this out. I've got it. I'm an adult now. But egotism is, you're running the bus, and yeah, that was scary, and I'm doing this pattern because I know what it's going to be, and yeah, it sucks, but I know it. And so.
Yeah, I love that. And, here's the other interesting part of this, too, is that going back to that anesthetic part and kind of the Advil, I don't want it to come off as a judgment of that either, because there's a usefulness to that. Sometimes the pain is a lot, and sometimes we need that space. But honor and own the choice. That's what's hard about this. It's not that we're judging or saying that you're in the wrongness for wanting to deaden the pain of the fool. Again, like we just said, we get it. We've been there. We still have things where we feel the fool and where egotism is at a 10. And we've also recognized patterns and habits and behaviors from the past where egotism has shown up. And we went, wait a minute, that's not the pattern I want anymore. Yes, you're going to be uncomfortable, ego. I'm Dave going to be uncomfortable for a while. And I recognize that I'm building towards something better, because if I continue with this, there will be a day where I wake up with no back pain, right? There will be a day where I still wake up with back pain. However, the difference this time is over time, I've built different tools, different patterns of behavior to where I now go, oh, I woke up with some low back pain or my back is stiff. I don't immediately go to the Advil anymore because I don't sit in that egotism. Now I go to yoga or stretching or some qigong,
And I want to put one more little caveat into this, where the egotism is being the fool on purpose, where you don't allow yourself to be the confident person that maybe lives inside of you. Let's just play with that one for a second, where the egotism is, I'm going to make myself small, or I'm going to be like, I can't do these things, or I let myself be airy-fairy or flighty. I don't know how to organize. That's egotism too. So don't think that egotism is always being the bigger, I'm the best. It's also being inferior. If you sit in that place where you're, I don't really care and I just flow with the world and everything's fine, you're in your ego. And you need to rise up into your own power, where you do make decisions and you do make choices and you do show that you're confident and capable in some places. So let that one sit in there as well. It's not just a one-sided thing. Whatever you do most might be your ego.
Yeah. I think I'm just going to let that sit there. There's just a lot of depth to this quote. And honestly, the longer we're picking this apart and leaning into our own curiosity, the more I see that this one could go on and on too. So at least for me, I'd love to end it with this. The last thing is, on my end at least, is that the Fool is also a fun archetype for me. I love the Fool. The Fool shows up in Tarot a lot, and it's a major arcana, and it represents potential, opportunity, new challenges. It's not about embarrassment, pain, looking like a fool, as the vernacular is. And I love that it literally turns that energy on its head.
Yeah. Yeah. Let the fool, the good fool, the useful fool, be the one that steps into the adventure of the unknown. And let the bad fool be the one that is fake and hides and pushes away. That's the unuseful fool. So step into the fool that wants to be in the adventure and wants to go into the unknown. And yeah, tell us what you think of this quote. It's getting deeper for us. Did we give you some thoughts that you want to share with us, or do you think all of our direction is completely off? Let us know.
Yeah. And as always, make sure to comment on our videos wherever you're watching, give us a like, and be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening.
Until next time.
See ya.